Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. We're here in Palm Beach, Florida for Restoration Weekend, and I'm joined by Dr. Andrew Bostom, who is a medical doctor but also an expert on Sharia law and radical Islam. Dr. Bostom, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, John.
Your new book is called Sharia versus Freedom, The Legacy of Islamist Totalitarianism. Do you see some of this legacy appearing now as we see the expansion of radical Islam following the Arab Spring?
Yes, in fact, I think it's driven largely by the phenomenon of a resurgence of the Sharia, which is really the essence of Islam. The Sharia is a system that derives from Islam's canonical texts, the Quran and the Hadith. The Hadith are, loosely speaking, could be seen as sort of a Muslim Gospels. They're Muhammad's words and deeds as recorded by his earliest followers. This material was filtered through the prism of great Islamic legists, lawyers, theologians, and a whole encompassing set of regulations was put together, some of which appear to be purely religious, but the part that conflicts with Western notions of liberty and law are the political aspects of the Sharia, and they are in full-blown resurgence right now. And they fundamentally oppose freedom of conscience, freedom of speech. It includes the entire jihad war ideology, which is really an imperialistic doctrine of conquest. All kinds of regulations for non-Muslim minorities that are very discriminatory and dehumanizing. Same applies even to Muslim women, who are basically treated as chattel. And then there are aspects that are terribly offensive in terms of human dignity to Muslims themselves. So lashing for alcohol consumption, stoning to death for adultery, mutilating punishments for theft. What we see now, unfortunately, and it is epitomized by the Arab Spring, there was a harbinger in terms of polling data, which showed that a lot of the attitudes across North Africa, two countries in particular, Morocco and Egypt, were sampled late 2006, early 2007. Two questions jump out in this poll that was conducted by the University of Maryland and World Opinion Dynamics. There was a sample of 1,000 from Morocco and Egypt that were included as part of a larger sample that went further east to Pakistan and ultimately to Indonesia. The Moroccan and Egyptian sample was quite remarkable, again, in terms of the Arab Spring, in that two questions jump out. One was a question about the strict, and the word was strict, application of Sharia law, so it would include the things that I just enumerated. And roughly 3/4 of the respondents wanted that. And the other outcome that was concordant with it, which suggested that this wasn't just an outlying question, was the idea of the recreation of a transnational caliphate, so the original Islamic empire. And again, upwards of 70% wanted that outcome. So when you see the Arab Spring on the heels of these kinds of mass sentiments, I guess in the end it's not that surprising.
So you would say that the region is moving toward a direction based on this polling data that, if not stopped, there could be a resurgence of a...
It really, unfortunately, seems headed in that direction, and that's really what the Muslim Brotherhood and other so-called, what the West calls to, is fundamentalist political parties and religious groups appeal to. But it's a top-down, bottoms-up phenomenon. Is that are they simply mirroring what the masses already want? Are they fomenting it to a certain extent? It's very hard to disentangle, but the polling data would suggest that they're filling a popular need.
Now, you hear concerns about Sharia law infiltrating the United States, and then on the other hand, you hear people say that's impossible, it would never happen here. Right. Where do you fall in this?
My concern is to look at institutional Islam. We see the example of the Middle East, where clearly the Sharia is what is being sanctioned by the major religious teaching institutions, etc. The problem in the United States is that we're now seeing, since so many of these imams, etc., are trained in the Middle East, we're seeing institutional Islam in the United States wanting to have the same Sharia-guided principles govern the Muslim community in the United States and in Canada. So, for example, there's an organization called the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. It's a very mainstream organization. And its purpose is to actually provide training to imams in the U.S. and Canada. It also has a public access website, which you can just go online and review, and it will render opinions, so-called fatwas, on all kinds of religious and what we would consider also be political issues that relate to Muslims. So issues of piety of practice, but also issues like, what do you do with a blasphemer, someone who criticizes the religion or criticizes Muhammad? What if a Muslim in North America wants to leave Islam and either become an agnostic or convert to Christianity or some other religion? What about the issue of female genital mutilation, which in certain schools of Islamic law, particularly the Shafi'ite school, is something that's sanctioned. So that's why this is such a horrible practice in Indonesia on the one hand and Egypt on the other hand. Both, even though they're far-flung geographically, are under the Shafi'ite school. What is the notion of marital rape that is a concept in the West but doesn't really exist under the Sharia? These questions are answered in the same way that an imam in Saudi Arabia or Iran might answer them for North American Muslims.
And what is the most important thing to stem that progression here in the United States?
I think it's just affirming our own principles. So for example, when the issue came up about the Innocence of Muslims trailer, and its critical appraisal of Muhammad, which incidentally actually comes from the Muslim sources, but without getting into all that controversy, the issue was a question for Muslims of blaspheming Muhammad. We saw demonstrations in Dearborn, Michigan, about that, and actually asking for the application of what's really Sharia blasphemy law in the United States. We also saw the Islamic Circle of North America issue a statement that would support implementing some form of blasphemy law in the United States, which of course is anathema to our Constitution. But more recently, polling data were released from a group called Wenzel Associates. It wasn't a random digit dial, sample, perfect epidemiologic methods. It was a convenient sample drawn off trade lists of Muslims, but a sample of 600 of high socioeconomic status, high educational level. 60% of them favored the application of what we would consider to be blasphemy law, that people who criticize Islam or Muhammad should be punished. And these are American Muslims who are actually quite successful by the indicators in the survey in this country. So something's wrong in the way that we are inculcating our own constitutional values. I don't blame the Muslims. I think this is part of their tradition, and I think we're not succeeding in making clear what our own principles are.
Well, the Muslim religion is growing in popularity here in the United States, something certainly to keep an eye on. I know you will do that. Dr. Andrew Bostom, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, sir.